All right, welcome to the ES Specialty Track Workshop. This is the first of 3 sessions, and I'm going to open up the poll. Launch poll. All right, so take a look at that and answer to the best of your ability, and we'll give everyone else a few minutes. There are about 120 people that's indicated they wanted to participate. We have 72 in the room, so we'll give people a few minutes to log in. So I'm going to end the poll and share the results. So first question, what publication should ES officers be familiar with? CAP Reg 60-3, which is what? It's the ES Training and Operations Reg. CAP Pamphlet 70-3, that's the Emergency Services Specialty Track Pamphlet. CAP Reg 35-6, it's personnel reg, right? Why would we need to know that? Anyone? Because that's the awarding of operations qualification badges. And all of the above is the best answer. There are a lot of facets to this role, and we need to know a lot of stuff. None, reading is for aerospace education officers and admin officers, is not a good answer.
It is funny, though.
I'm trying. All right. So how long have you been an ES officer? It looks like the majority of us here, about half, a little over half, are new to the role. And that's great. And only about 10% have been in for over 10 years. Good stuff. And so those of us who have less experience have new ideas. Those of us with more experience have some expertise to share, and we can all learn good things. Which of these is a free resource for additional ES-related training? The Red Cross is great training. It's not free. Community college classes, again, great training, but you'll have to pay for them. FEMA independent study courses are free. There's a free resource for ES-related training. And all the above is incorrect because those first 2 options are not free. How does the core value of volunteer service relate to the ES officer role? Well, ES officers and related positions have to do a lot. And so you have to be willing to put in the commitment and the time and the energy. And so that's how it relates. These next 3 questions relate to the essay in the back of CAP Pamphlet 70-3. What type of control is exercised by an incident commander during a mission? OPCON is correct, operational control. ADCON is what commanders and their staffs through the commander's authority exercise. OPCON is what incident commanders use. And more on that in that essay. And TACON, we'll talk about in a minute. What type of control is exercised by an ES training officer when planning a unit-based weekend SAR training? And that's ADCON. That's that administrative control. You have authority from your commander to plan and execute events, right? You're not controlling people. You're not mobilizing and demobilizing. You're not making tactical decisions. you're doing administrative work. And that's what the ES officer role is. It's an administrative function. You're exercising authority on behalf of your commander to do a job with your commander's approval. That's all that is. And what type of control is exercised by ground team leaders when they choose which way to take when they're on a sortie? That's tactical control. That's making those decisions in the field. You've already been given an objective from your operational control from the IC and his staff. Now you can make tactical decisions on how to execute. What is the minimum time it takes to earn a Master ES Officer rating and badge? That's 36 months. 6 months for your technician, 12 months for your senior, 18 months for your master. All added up together is 36 months. However, what is the minimum time it takes to become a competent ES officer, fully capable of functioning without supervision? There is no minimum time for that. I get a lot of questions. I've gotten a lot of curiosity about, oh, what do I need to do to earn the badge? That don't matter. What's really important is becoming a fully capable, fully competent ES officer, able to operate independently and do your job. That's the important part. And which of these is not a role that can get credit towards on-the-job training for the ES specialty track? Out of these options, it's the communication officer. Disaster relief, operations, homeland security, those positions all can get credit towards the ES officer rating and badge. Make sense? Any questions about those? Well, great. So we are in, we're pretty lucky right now. We have Major Zapatakis and Major DeBrose, a couple of the most experienced ES folks that I know. Do you guys want to introduce yourselves real quick?
Sorry, I had to unmute my mic. So my name is Mike Zabatagis with Maryland Wing. I started the CAP in the year 2000. Became a wing, went through the progression of squadron ES officer, group ES officer to wing ES officer. That was 2006. So I was wing ES officer for about 2 years. Stepped down for personal reasons, had some things I had to deal with. Became a wing ES officer again for about a year. And currently, I actually hold a wing level position as a GIS officer, which is a long story about how GIS relates to the emergency services function, but that's for a different day. So primarily my CAP career has been ES from the beginning. So for the last 20 years almost, I've been working in the ES function within Civil Air Patrol.
Awesome. Major DeBrose?
Yeah, Major Frank DeBrose, most recently from Washington Wing. I joined CAP in 1996. Yeah, 96. Converted to the senior side in 03. And then by then I was pretty into ES. So as a senior member, I started. So Major Zabatakis went through the wickets, squadron ES officer, ended up actually in Maryland Wing when I graduated college. So met Major Zabatakis there and was a group ES officer, squadron commander there. Started going to NISA around the same time as an instructor and taught at NISA for a few years. And I've bounced around the country because of my job. So I've been in Oklahoma, I've been in Maryland, I've been in North Carolina, I've been in actually Fayetteville Squadron. I think there was someone from Fayetteville Squadron here that was supposed to be here, Washington Wing, and now I'm back in Massachusetts. So, but yeah, I've done curriculum development for ES. I've taught at the different ground schools in various states, and yeah, that's about it for me.
Cool. And I'm Ed Boss. I'm currently doing Wing IG. Previously, I lived in Alaska, where I was on the ES staff there. Done all sorts of good stuff. Worked at NISA for a while, and that's me in a nutshell. Here we are in week 1. So we'll be going over the specialty track. We'll be going over positions that relate to that specialty track. And then functions that we're going to talk about include annual planning and integrating from the squadron, group, wing level, and up. What questions do we have to start? I know I had you guys email some questions and we sent back some answers today. If you haven't seen those, check your email. But does anybody have any questions that we can make sure that we cover before the end of the show? Nobody. 85 people on, 87 people on. Nobody's got questions.
So I have one.
Sure.
What sort of jobs for a senior member ES officer only apply to senior ES officers and would not be accomplishable by a cadet ES officer?
So let me rephrase that. What jobs can a cadet ES officer do? Okay. I will try to make sure that we cover that. Can a cadet ESO do? Question mark. All right. Anybody else?
Yeah, the bit about using GIS and ES has me intrigued. That sounds great to me, based on my perspective of things. Love to hear a few minutes on that sometime.
Okay. The week 2 workshop, Z, I don't know if you want to put together a couple slides of that for next week because we're going to talk about systems.
Okay.
Great, thank you.
Does that work for you, Z?
Yeah, I'm sorry. I thought I had my mic on. Yeah, that's fine.
Cool. Thanks, man. You did. I just want to make sure that you look disappointed that you couldn't talk about it now.
Well, I'm sure you have a schedule laid out here. I'll try to be real quick as a teaser for next week. So probably 10 years ago, there was a East Coast group of us had realized there's a lot of GIS people that don't know how to spell search and rescue, and a bunch of search and rescue people that don't know how to make maps. So I took some courses at University of West Virginia, their GIS curriculum, solely to work GIS from a search and rescue perspective. And that has led into me now being part of the national GIS team with the CAP.
Okay. So the specialty track has 3 levels like every other specialty track in CAP. For the technician level, you're required to do FEMA independent study training, ICS 100, 200, 700, and 800. There's a reading list that is adjusted to your personal training by your OJT mentor. There is an AdCon, OpCon, TACCon essay, like those 3 questions that we went over, talking about the various kinds of control in CAP. Training resource list, notification procedures. Those are basically how you get your unit to be able to function for ES. Using e-services and WIMMers, admin retention, annual training, mission qualification participation, and your 6-month OJT. And then for the senior and master ratings, it's very similar. So it's more training, more mission qualification and participation, longer internships, with the addition of some broadening courses. And so it's not enough to just work within your squadron and never leave your squadron to do ES. You actually have to go out beyond your squadron to learn more about it. Does that make sense? Okay. So notes on cadets. In the regulation, it says that cadets can earn the basic emergency services qualification badge. And they would do that by doing the requirements in the technician rating and then being awarded the badge by their unit commander. The thing to remember for that is that even though that they can wear the badge once they've earned it, even as a senior member, they don't get the technician rating until they're a senior member and it gets approved by their commander. And so that has to be something that you keep in mind. Cadets cannot be appointed as the primary ES officer. That must be a senior member. And this process will likely change when the new professional development system is released in August. That's when it's projected to drop. All right, let's talk a little bit about positions. And so what we'll do is we will have a quick discussion in a breakout room, have a couple of minutes to discuss what the most common functions of ES officers, what you in your unit or an ES officer in your unit would do, and one or two functions that don't get done regularly. So it's something that maybe doesn't need to be done in your unit or just hasn't been done in your unit. And let's go start breakout rooms. So back to sharing. If you go to your participant menu, you should be able to raise your hand or respond yes or no. Did anybody have any particularly fruitful outcomes of that discussion? You can raise your hand. All right, so I'm going to attempt to unmute everyone. All right, Lieutenant Blyleven, what did you have to share?
Well, I learned from the others that I wasn't the only one feeling a little wobbly and not having someone within my own unit to have as to see how things were done before, because other people are going into units that there has not been an ESO. So that was comforting.
Yeah, and we don't have to feel like we're alone, right? We have lots of backup, and we all have questions sometimes, and so feel free to reach out to other people. Chiefless Seren, what do you have?
Yes, so my group, the group I was in, discussed responsibilities such as picking personnel for ES missions, developing and implementing squadron training goals, and maintaining ES equipment.
And that's things that don't happen? Or
Things that do happen.
Okay. Yeah, maintaining equipment is tough because, you know, a lot of people in a lot of units don't know that, like, you have to maintain equipment. You have to check batteries for equipment even if you don't use it all the time, stuff like that. All right, so, sorry, I am, okay. Colonel Paquin, what do you got?
Let me see. So we discussed the fact that we were talking mostly about the second question. Can you bring the previous slide up so I can see the question? Make sure I'm answering correctly.
I'm sorry, say that again?
Can you bring up the previous slide so I can see the two questions? Yeah,
Oh, sure.
All right, so we focused mostly on the second portion, important functions that do not get accomplished regularly. So one thing is that unit alert rosters are most times not updated properly, and so we have a hard time notifying members when a mission comes up and getting the right qualified people there. Second thing is that I've seen a trend in my time of service where there won't be an annual training plan that's complete and accurate, and so come July, August, ground team leaders will say, okay, let's go do some training, and so they'll throw something together. It's not planned properly, and there's lots of issues there. And then last is that I've seen that a lot of emergency services officers are not getting out and talking with their local agencies having jurisdiction, and so we've got a disconnect between CAP and the rest of the ES world.
Yeah, those are all really good points. And, you know, annual planning, doing the work, doing the planning work is important. And getting out in the community and functioning with other agencies is huge. And we'll be talking more about that throughout the workshop. And then the last hand up we have is Bill Dwyer. What do you have, sir?
Yes, I was. We talked more on the uh, some of on the most common, in that some of us, me particularly, had no idea that like even ES was different from ground team, because our unit is so new at it. And for some of us, this is the very first training we've ever gotten on this. So in a lot of ways, and at least in my case, I'm very clueless on it, but still interested.
Well, great. Well, it's good that you're at the workshop then. You know, and to your point, you know, a lot of people might conflate ES with ground team and operations with air crew, and that's really not the case. You know, we can look at this, and this is a word cloud of all the words in the ES specialty track pamphlet. You know, and you know, we see things like track, rating, position, staff, adcon, assigned. What are some good ones? Plans. That should be a bigger word, because planning is a huge part of what we do. Supervision. Yeah, so lots to do. So let's talk a little bit about the organization. It looks very similar going from the unit all the way up to the region level. ES and operations work very closely. Typically, ES officers work for operations officers. That's not always the case. For instance, the wing commander has a discretion to move the ES officer to next to the operations officer if there's a reason to divide their labor more. Counter drug, search and rescue, training, disaster relief, and homeland security are all functions that ES has a hand in. And as we go through the job descriptions, we're going to see that they're all pretty closely related. So starting with ES officers, you know, here's a wall of words, but if we look, you know, ES officers manage activities. They develop agreements. They develop an ES force. They develop training programs. They develop procedures. They maintain records. And they develop and maintain an alerting system. What is all this? All this is program administration and management. If you'll notice, none of these things say be a ground team leader, be a mission pilot, be an incident commander. Those are separate. Being an ES officer is not those field functions, those ES qualification functions, those operational functions. It's the program management side. You know, a training officer, it's the same stuff broken down. Oh, go back. Focusing on the training piece. You assist your primary ES officer. You develop training documentation. You coordinate the training for search and rescue, or rather, you coordinate with the search and rescue and disaster relief officers. You coordinate with external agencies. And you process 101s, which is now that online CATFORM 101 system in e-services. Homeland Security Officer, same thing, right? You manage activities, you prevent duplication of effort, you develop agreements, you ensure that we're capable of responding to requests, you monitor training, you monitor procedures, you monitor evaluations, and you know your responsibilities. And so it's focusing on just the Homeland Security piece and working with Homeland Security customers and making sure that we have the training that we need to do those Homeland Security missions. Search and rescue, same thing, focusing on the search and rescue side, ground team and air crew and mission-based staff. Disaster relief, focusing on disaster relief side, focusing on training, focusing on finding customers and making sure that we have the capability to meet their needs. Counter drug, which is only at the wing or region level, same thing. You are working with counter drug customers. You are making sure that we have appropriately qualified and trained counter drug personnel. And you have the plans in place to make sure those things happen. Right? Here's the important takeaway for all this. Emergency services officers advise commanders, and then commanders decide. It's our job as ES officers to have good advice to give to commanders. We counsel them, and then they figure out what we're going to do. ES officers do program administration and management. We worry about documents. We worry about annual plans. We do the planning, and then we do the execution of that plan. We process awards. It's all those administrative pieces that make the program work. We do relationship management. We find potential customers. We find potential partners. We work with internal customers, including our commanders, the people we're training, the people who are already qualified, that we maintain their records and do those things. And it's about ongoing training and cultivating expertise. It's about making sure that we continuously improve ourselves and improve our programs.
Yeah, one thing to really stress here, as an ES officer, you don't have command over anybody. You are there to provide training and provide training opportunities and to help manage the ES force. But the command of the force does reside with the commands, the unit commanders, the group commanders, the wing commanders.
Great point, sir. Here's things that ES officers don't do. We don't manage missions. ES officers exercise TACCON based on the authority and responsibility given to us by a commander, not OPCON. What's that, sir? Not OPCON or TACCON. That resides in the operations side. ES officers don't sign contracts, so you can't go visit a potential customer and say, yeah, we're totally going to do this. We're totally going to do this thing. Let me just sign your contract. That's got to go up to the general counsel's office.
Colonel Boss, this is Colonel
Yeah.
Buchanan. I think you mean in the prosecution of our ES officer assigned role. I mean, obviously, a lot of ES officers are going to have ratings that might, in fact, put them somewhere in an operation to where they're doing some of those functions. I think that's what you're trying to say, sir.
One more time, sir.
You're saying the ES officers don't do any of these things, but a lot of people that are ES officer track will do those things because they also have a rating. I just wanted to clarify that that's what you meant.
Right. So we all wear many hats in CAP. So as a ES officer, I'm also an IC.
Yes.
So I have to decide what hat I'm wearing at any given moment. And it's very bad practice to bounce in and out of functions. So you should, when an actual incident is happening and if I have been delegated as the IC for that, then that is my role for that mission. When we are not OPCON and the wing is settled and everything's normal business, that's when you're doing your ES officer function. So there's your operational function. We all probably have various ES ratings: ground team, air crew, APs, all those kinds of things. But you can also be an ES officer and have many different ratings.
All right,
Does
we're
that
going
make
to pause
sense?
for a second. I have to pause my share. All right, let me see about letting people back into the meeting. I apologize. Z, if you have anything else to wax politically about for a minute while I stall.
Okay. Well, did that make sense? Because in some cases you do have to be, you have to be careful sometimes. So the 9 to 5 job, so to speak, of which we all know is really starts at 5 and it really never ends. You're working with at the wing level. Let's start at the squadron level. So you're working with your squadron. You're trying to encourage people to get training. You're providing them with opportunities to get training. That's the ES officer function there. But as an individual, you may decide, you know what, I'm a photographer and I want to learn how to be an airborne photographer. So I go out and I get training to be a AP. Now, when an actual real world mission happens and I sign up to participate as an AP, then that's my role. I am now an AP, to be tasked in an aircraft to go out and take photos of what command has decided they need pictures of. So they're really two very different things. And many of us have wear many different hats, I guess is what I'm trying to say. So the ES officer at the, even up at the group, so at the group level, it just really, you're doing the same things, you're just have a larger pool of resources and responsibilities to try to bring a group up to a response capability. And I want to take a step back to the reaching out to outside customers. My experience has been people tend to overextend our capability to outside customers. And we have to be very careful of that. So that was in the questions came in earlier. There was a question about how do I reach out to a local emergency management agency? I strongly recommend, if you are a squadron or group ES officer, I strongly recommend that you touch base up the chain of command before you do that. Say, hey, I want to go out and reach out to this county emergency management agency at the local level, and just to make sure that they're not already doing something, and that it's a consistent message across the entire organization when you do go to say, this is what our capability is, and we would like to work with you.
All right. So on to annual planning. So why annual planning matters? First, it's in the job description. It's part of our job. Second, we want to identify. This slide did not get updated. So instead of identifying goals for recruiting or retention, it's identifying goals for emergency services, for training, for working with customers, for reaching out to community partners. So those are the goals that you want to identify, write down, and talk about with your commander. You want to talk about what resources you need to accomplish those goals. And we use it for accountability, manageability. If it's mentionable, it's manageable, if you've ever heard of that. If you can identify a goal and what you want to work towards, you can actually put the effort towards working towards that. And then continuity. Who knows? You might get promoted to national commander overnight, in which case you better have a written plan that the person that takes over for you can follow. Why goal setting matters? So again, it gives us a direction to work towards. So we have this annual plan with goals on it, and we negotiate those goals with our leadership so that they can share what they see and what they need, where they want the direction they want the organization to go. And we all know that we're on the same page. And again, it's about accountability and manageability. So steps for annual planning. What you want to do first is look at your previous plan. You want to look at what was on the plan, what got accomplished, what didn't get accomplished, and why it didn't get accomplished. You want to take your observations to leadership, and you can communicate with them, revising what you want to do next year, whether you want to pursue the same goals, if they didn't get met, if you want to adjust them, and work with leadership to identify what resources are available, what you can do, what tools you have. After you have all the information, then you put it together and actually build the plan. So you look at previous plans, you work with leadership to identify what you want the next plan to look like, and then you put it together. And you want to work with your unit, group, wing, and region counterparts across the board. It may not be you communicating from the unit level to the region level, but everyone that has a stake in this, those plans are going to roll up. And so that the region commander has an idea of what's going on all the way down to the unit level. The plans from the units get consolidated at group and wing level, wings get consolidated up to the region level. Things you want to include. You want to include training and evaluation to maintain sufficient personnel. So you have to have a plan to train and a plan to evaluate. And remember, those are two different things. You want to have plans for exercises. Remember, a SARX is not a good place to do training. A SARX is a place where you exercise the things that you have already been trained on. And you want to talk about relationship building in the plan. You want to talk about what community organizations, what partners you're going to reach out to, and who will do what, by when, and how. Which person from the Civil Air Patrol Squadron is going to go talk to what community organization partner is going to plan what event, when it's going to happen, and how it's going to happen. What resources are you going to use? All that goes into an annual plan. Now, integrating across echelons, like we talked about, the units are where the rubber meets the road. We talk about that a lot. It's where the tires hit the tarmac, if you will. You also want to remember that that stuff, that information, those plans, all that rolls up because the national commander manages the organization through his staff and through his commanders, and all that stuff is going to get worked together. Strategic plans from the national level set our trajectory and our intent. Unity of command. Everything we do in one way or another should be supporting that strategic plan. Commanders at all echelons set staff-informed objectives. Remember, we as ES officers are negotiating and advising and consulting our commanders so they can make decisions. Aerospace is doing the same thing. Cadet programs is doing the same thing. We have goals that support those objectives. So if an objective is grow ground search and rescue in Oregon Wing, that's an objective. The goals are going to be those SMART goals. What am I going to do? Like what individual steps am I going to take that are specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound? Remember, SMART goals. Plans to pursue those goals. That's what all of our plans work up to. All of these things put together. The individual steps you take all go under those goals. And like we said, they roll up and integrate. Our wing staff, Z, is it May those plans are due, annual plans are due?
To be honest, it's, I don't know, maybe it was the COVID thing kind of threw things for a loop. We had our training plan meeting. It was just last month for FY21. Oh, I'm sorry. Let me back up. That's incorrect. You're right. It is this was where what we did last month was locking dates down for specific training events. But the plan that has to be entered into the system, into e-services in WIMMERS for approval, for the wing approval that that goes up through the chain of command. Yeah, that is, I believe that is in May.
Yeah. And so if the wing is submitting that plan for approval in May, when does the unit have to do it? Well, they have to get their stuff into the wing before then. Now, when I was at the wing level, we didn't necessarily get a lot of information from the units about what they wanted to accomplish. So we weren't able to integrate that into the plan that went up to region and national and set the budget and got approval. And so if units have objectives, that needs to get sent up through the chain of command, through the chain of coordination, right? Because ES officers don't command one another, but you can coordinate from the unit ES officer to the group ES officer to the wing ES officer. And so we need to use all those channels to get that information together so that we have the budget that we want and the plans that we want to support those national strategic objectives. Staff coordination with counterparts. So there was a couple of questions about how do we do unit alerting or set up a unit alerting system. A lot of wings are moving to wing-wide systems for alerting and response. And what does that mean at the unit level? Well, that means that you are, instead of creating a plan on how to do that and creating a system, you're shepherding your members in how to use that system. You're coaching people. You're making sure that the system is up to date with information from your unit so that the wing has it. And relationship management synergy. Another important thing in that FAQ was, what do we do to go talk to a community partner? Well, you just go talk to the community partner. But you want to make sure that you coordinate with your wing counterpart or your group counterpart if you're at the unit level. And the reason for that is they may have already talked to someone at the state level or at a regional level. And what we don't want to do is make CAP A look like it doesn't know what it's doing and that the left hand isn't talking to the right hand. And B, we don't want to oversell CAP. We don't want to overpromise and say we can do all this stuff and we have all this personnel and we got radios and vans and planes and we can do anything you need us to do. And then when somebody makes a request, we can't deliver on that promise. And so we do want to communicate across echelons and make sure that we look like we know what we're doing and we're professional, so that the left hand knows what the right hand is doing, and B, that we're not overpromising and under-delivering. So here's a mock chart. You know, we have region commander and region operations and emergency services, wings and their staff, squadrons and their staff, or groups, if you want that. And this is just to point out, within a wing, right, emergency services staff should talk to one another. And within a wing, unit emergency services staff should talk to their wing counterparts. And wing counterparts should talk to one another and talk to their region counterpart. And all that communication should be happening regularly. There shouldn't be any kind of a barrier or hesitation. It's very important that we actually have this communication. Otherwise, all this integration can't happen. We need to communicate and pick up the phone and email and talk to one another to do all this stuff. Z, when you were the wing ES, you know, is that how you did it?
I actually, yes, and I actually had, because Maryland borders Pennsylvania, of which is Maryland being in Mid-Atlantic, Pennsylvania being in Northeast region. So I also worked outside of the region. So I worked with the Pennsylvania wing ES officer, as well as of course, Maryland, Delaware, Virginia, West Virginia, which are all the bordering states. You should always, if you're at the wing level, or even if you're a squadron that's very close to a border of another state, get that information and train with each other. It's strongly encouraged.
Awesome. All right. Well, that brings us to 712. What we talked about so far was the overview of the specialty track. We talked about positions, annual planning, and integrating across echelons. So we had a question about what can cadets do, or what positions can cadets hold as ES officers or ES positions. Frank, what reg are those cadet positions in, or Colonel Buchanan? Is that in the 60-1?
It's not the 60-1. The positions in ES are all going to be carried in the 30-1, and then, you know, other organizational charts. 60-1 doesn't actually cover cadets holding any positions other than specified within the cadet chain of command. So that doesn't mean they can't have a duty or a role in excess of that, but there's not any designated for cadets out of the book.
Okay, thank you, sir. And for those who aren't aware, Colonel Buchanan is our Director of Cadet Program, so he knows his stuff. And so based on what Colonel Buchanan said, there really isn't a whole lot of restriction on what cadets can do. And so you can use a Form 2A, a personnel action, and do an additional duty for a cadet as a unit ES assistant, or a unit search and rescue officer assistant, or NCO, or whatever. And that's fine. And any of those positions, if you look in pamphlet 70-3, any of those roles, if a cadet is assisting in that role, can count towards what you need to earn the badge, if that's what a cadet is interested in. Or if they actually want to do it because they want to get involved in public service, public safety, emergency services stuff professionally later on in life. That's all good stuff to be exposed to.
So there was a question in the chat I filtered out, and it was asking about the Ltronics. So as many of you may know, Ltronics no longer exists. The gentleman decided to retire. We cannot purchase Elpers anymore. It's not available for repair. National has been doing some work to try and find replacement DF units. uh, 4 squadrons, more at the local level that are affordable. Many of the contractors who submitted bids were uh, up in the $10,000 to $15,000 range per unit. So they've been working on that. I don't know exactly where it is right now. I did some testing with the unit out at NISA last year, but I don't know. I know there's some CAP members. We have 55,000 members, and a lot of them are electronic wizards and have made their own. There are different types of DF gear out there other than the Eltronics, but the Eltronics, sorry to say, is pretty much winded down. So if you do have a unit that is in need of repair, unless you know someone who is really good at third party repair work, you may have a brick ultimately.
Actually, Major Gordon passed away not all that long ago.
Oh, sorry to hear. So yeah, the Eltronics, especially the really old Eltronics, the Elber, the little Elber, I believe is the name, and then what we refer to as the cheese block are no longer available. I do recommend there are other devices out there. They're reasonably easy to use. They're varying prices, extremely wide range in pricing on those. So sorry to answer your question that way, but that was so. And I also wanted to touch base on a little bit more on the training plan. Every wing probably does this differently. What we have tried in Maryland a couple of times is they literally took a Saturday, invited people to come up and laid out the entire year training plan on the wall. Had the easels and pulled them up, put up every month to make sure that not only was there a plan and as aligned with the available budget, but that there weren't conflicts with other aspects of CAP, that we weren't doing a SARX on drill weekend, things like that. So that's one way of doing it. But I personally have found there's not a whole lot of information that comes up. Most squadrons feel that they do what the wing tells them to do. And I think what happens is the wing doesn't hear anything, so they make a plan and send it down to the squadron. Now, wings are supposed to be support units. They're supposed to support the squadrons. So if squadrons should be coming up and saying, hey, I need help with this, or I need help with that. And then the group and wing emergency services officers should be doing their best to help provide that service back down to the squadron level. I had another note. Yeah, that was it. Trickle down to the group and squadron. Is there any questions about the training plan? The training plan can be a complicated beast, and different wings get different funding. There's the Air Force funding we get, and some wings do a very good job at going out and getting grant money. Some wings do a good job at getting state money for various ES activities, and some wings don't. So try to find out what your wing does. If what I have found, my personal experience is, if someone is contacting me and say, hey, I want to help you, I am more than happy to accept their help.
I bet you're not alone in that either. So here's that annual planning worksheet, and this is not a CAP official template. This is something that I put together to help people think through the process. Do whatever works for you at your unit, at your level. But the first step, review the previous annual plan. If your unit had an annual plan, or if you had a piece of the wing's annual plan, you want to look at this. Step 2, review guidance from higher headquarters. As an example, here's a goal directly out of the CAP 2020-2024 strategic plan. Strengthen national preparedness, response, and resilience by leveraging capabilities as a valued member of the total force. Sounds lofty. What does that mean to you? Well, the objective related to that goal is integrate airborne SOAS ground imagery systems into one imagery program. Okay, how do I make that work for my unit? Well, we're going to do camera training. We're going to get people SUAS qualified, right? Things like that. That's how you want to work with these goals, objectives, and then smaller pieces that you are going to use to build your plan at your unit. If there are any region-specific goals that aren't in that strategic plan, you can put it here. If there are any wing-specific goals or group goals that aren't in that strategic plan, you can put it here. Next step, communicate with leadership. Step 4, assemble the plan. And then, using those specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound SMART goal procedures, you can write SMART goals to go support those objectives and those strategic goals. Go back to the PowerPoint. I don't know if everybody saw in the chat, California Wing and some of us here in Oregon Wing as well are using the Mark IV sniffer, which is a really nice piece of equipment. It's $450, and it's fairly straightforward to build your own antennas for it, but it's pretty good stuff. Someone messaged me that the Cadet Staff Handbook, Cap Pamphlet 60-31, mentions, like in one sentence, that Cadet ES officer assists the senior staff in developing plans and training cadets in emergency services. So that's all straightforward.
Yeah, this is Colonel Buchanan. I wanted to caveat that as I thought about it and did some research, it's built in within e-services at a squadron level that you can assign a cadet NCO and a cadet officer to cadet communications officer, cadet ES officer, cadet operations officer. So that's kind of built in. It's not really talked about in 60-1 at all. However, if you dig into the SDO manual, it covers that a little bit. But, I keep thinking of the wing level, but at the squadron level, that's something you might want to do.
Thanks, sir. Appreciate it. All right, so you have our email addresses. I want to take a moment and say thank you very much, everyone, for hanging in there despite the Zoom bombing or Zoom hacking or whatever you want to call it. That was awkward and uncomfortable for all of us, and I really appreciate you guys sticking with us. Does anybody have any other questions?
No, sir. Thank you very much for your time and effort everybody put into it, from Billy Boop, Evan Boop, and Linda Boop.
Thanks, Boops.
Yeah. I noticed that you recorded this meeting. Where will you be putting that so that we can review it?
Did you see the link to the Girdwood Squadron website?
Yes.
So the Girdwood Squadron website is where I post things under the professional development workshops and then emergency services. That's
see.
where the recording will be.
Okay.
If I have a chance to edit it and put it up.
And the slide deck will be there as well.
Slide deck's already there.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Can you repeat one more time where you're putting it?
When I sent out notification about the workshop, there have been links and mentions of the girdwoodsquadron.com website. That's where these materials are getting posted.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Rogers?
I just wanted to thank you, Colonel Boss, for an awesome workshop. This has really been helpful, and I'm sure that all the folks that are new to emergency services have learned a lot from your presentation, along with your other presenters there. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yeah, Colonel Boss, I just wanted to second that. Captain Jimenez here. Thank you for putting it together. It's long due for us, and we need this kind of OJT, and then really appreciate you guys putting this together. Thank you so much for that, sir.
Yes, agree. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Will anything we're doing here mark off on SQTRs?
Not really, no. There's no specific task for going to a workshop for emergency services, but it's all good info.
You mentioned the sniffer, and I tried to do a quick search on that, and I'm seeing something from, I guess the company is Fox Hunt.
Yep.
Yeah, that appears to be an Australian company.
Yep.
Correct.
Do you have something about, more local places to obtain it, or, some information on that unit?
So fox hunting is a ham radio activity. It's a pastime. They do direction finding for fun. And so Fox Hunt, the company, makes that for ham radio guys. It can tune to our frequencies, which is why it's useful for us. If there are other companies that make other stuff, I haven't used it, but they might be out there. Check out Google fox hunting equipment, and you should find something.
Can I drop a name? Would that be Bob Miller Enterprises? I believe it's dfantennas.com. Look up Bob Miller. He's a California Wing member. He resells not only the sniffer unit, but also an antenna array that goes along with it, $480.
This is Captain Mason. I asked the original question, and I was hoping somebody else had a better answer, but I'm actually working with a local radio repair guy, and when COVID-19 is over, I'm probably going to take him my DF and my practice ELT, and he's indicated that he thinks he can fix it. And his job is fixing radios, and that's all they are. One's a radio, and the other one's a transmitter. And he's pretty comfortable that he can fix it. I already sent him the Eltronics had the circuit diagram online, so I already sent it to him, and he's pretty confident. But I can't recommend a guy yet because I haven't had a real dealing with him. I've talked to him on the phone, and we've gone back and forth. But when I get around to it, I'll have a better idea if it's going to work. And he's located in northeastern Pennsylvania, but I'm sure that he'd be willing to pursue shipping. And if he does a good job for me, I'm going to spread the word and tell him, you can perhaps get more business if you're willing to take this on as a specialty. So I'll let you guys know in the future.
Great, thanks, sir.
So everyone.
Bob Miller already has an established business where he's doing repairs for these things?
Who's that, sir?
Somebody said Bob Miller in California already has a business where he's doing these repairs. Is that what the person said?
No, he makes
He
sniffers.
sells the sniffer and
different.
Yes, on the flip side, the practice beacons, every squadron should have access. Now, each wing did it a little bit differently to practice beacons. National, several years ago, sent out to every wing a cache of beacons. Now, how the wing distributed them out from there is probably different, 50 different ways that happened. But if you're not sure, reach out through your chain of command to find out, hey, you want to do some training. If you have a DF unit, but you don't have a practice beacon, reach out and say, hey, can we get a practice beacon set up so we can go out and do some practice? And also, it was actually in one of, I believe, the Q&A piece prior to the tonight, you do not have to be on a mission number to do training. So you can go out and do training without being on a mission in Wimmers.
Training and evaluation. All sorts of good stuff.
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
Something I heard not long ago. With the Elpers, aren't they getting getting away from those because the airplanes have changed their frequencies or something? Just something different than what they've been using?
Z, you want to take it?
Sure. So the traditional 121.5 distress beacon frequency was taken out of service, or let me go back. In 2009, the satellite system that listens for the 121.5 distress beacons was turned off. So the Coast Guard made it mandatory for Marine to convert over to the new 406 frequencies for their EPIRBs. Same thing as an ELT, it's just in a boat. The AOPA is a powerful lobby, and they blocked legislation that would have forced aviation to switch to the 406. However, so there are aircraft still out there that have the old 121.5 distress beacons in them. The satellites, if there's an incident, the satellites will not hear them. Usually CAP gets alerted to those types of missions because other aircraft happen to be flying over top of a crashed airplane that a beacon was going off. So if you're an owner of an airplane and you want to take that chance, more power to you. So the new satellite system for 2009, I shouldn't say new, because that's now 11 years ago, is the 406 frequency. The CAP aircraft have the units in the Becker units that can hear the 406 frequency. The 406 beacons do transmit a 121.5 signal, but it is at 1/10 of a watt. Okay, it is 10 times weaker than the old 121.5 beacons. So unless you're very close to it or you're up in an airplane with a direct line of sight, you're not going to hear it. So the principle is the 406 frequency. First, that frequency penetrates the atmosphere better to get to the satellites on a more timely fashion. Some of the 406 beacons have embedded GPS, so that could get you down to a 100-meter accuracy of where a beacon would be going off. Some of the 406s do not have GPS, but they're still much more accurate in the range of where the beacon would be as compared to the 121.5s. The 121.5s, I believe it was a radius of 12 miles. So if you draw a circle on a map that's 24 miles in diameter, that's a significant search area. The 406 beacons bring you down, like I said, if it's embedded GPS, can bring you down within 100 meters of where the beacon is. So it is still important to have DF gear to get you down to that last little bit into a crash site or a, for the most part, non-distress beacons that are going off. There's a windstorm, went through an airport, a hard landing. My personal experience, many beacons, they got maintained and the batteries way expired, and it must be an electronic trip in there that sets them off. So we still have to go out and turn those off, but it's just a homing frequency now, the 121.5. It is no longer the actual distress signal itself. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. So my thinking is that our helpers are only good for very minimal use. What about getting the helpers, I guess, that will work at the newer frequency that the airplanes are using?
So I would say I kind of held back a little bit. So there is actually, I don't remember what year, they're looking at a couple of years of truly phasing out the 121.5 frequency completely. And you're right, the handheld units will basically become an obsolete piece of equipment. The 406s are going to, and there's approximately 10 406 frequencies that they're currently using in distress beacons. Right now, the handheld 406 equipment is very, very expensive. You're talking that $10,000 to $15,000 range. So all beacons are still manufactured with the 121.5 homing frequency, but the system is migrating to a 406 sole frequency, but that's still a couple of years out. And given as long as the 121.5s are still out there, it may be 10 years before the old Elpers or DFing to the 121.5 frequency is no longer necessary.
Lieutenant Greg, did you have something to ask?
Thank you.
Yeah, I think we have some time there. But yes, you're right. I would probably, my gut, as long as it has been since, I mean, it's 11 years and there's still 121.5 beacons out there.
We're continuing to DF 121.5s. Did one a few weeks ago.
Yeah.
to your point, sir. And I guess I would add also that sometimes the 406s are not picked up by all the aircraft that have a big Becker in them. Ours doesn't really cover all of the frequencies of the 406 beacons. Some source of chagrin, but they're not all created equal with respect to 406 frequency coverage.
Yeah, and I'm not sure with the aircraft and how the Becker units are updated. I know initially the 406, I think it was 3 or 4 frequencies. I think they're up to about 10 frequencies now. So that might be the reason why.
There's a channel spacing issue that we're finding on ours, and so we can't get them all quite covered. Would love to get ours updated, maybe in the future.
Colonel Paquin.
I just want to throw out there is a 406 DF unit. They're $2,500. A company called Polaris. I think it's called Polaris. I'm down in California. I have experience with the Mark IV sniffer. It's a good unit. 450 is a good price point for it. And then someone made mention about getting practice beacons. You can get those off of I think SkyGeek for like $200. If you look for do a Google search for Pointer Cadet.
Nice, great tip. Thanks, sir. Well, we are past our allotted time, so I'm going to end the recording.